The First Descendant, a game about big assets and even bigger bosses. So we played the final tech test of First Descendant before its upcoming launch, and I want to start the video with a quick side note. The game is actually a lot of fun, and any criticism in this video is meant to be entirely constructive, and it shouldn't detract from the fact that I have had a blast playing this. And with a few improvements, I genuinely feel like the game could be pretty incredible. It's all too easy to be super critical when you have well-established games like Warframe and Destiny that get played by millions of people. It's also way too easy to criticize a free-to-play game for having microtransactions, and specifically, it's way too easy to criticize Nexon for having microtransactions, but we'll cover that a little later in the video. I play a lot of these games. I've been through Anthem, Outriders, The Division 2, Warframe, Destiny. I've played most of them. And those games like Anthem and Outriders were fun to play because they were kind of a breath of fresh air. It was something new to the genre. These games usually struggle with appealing to hardcore players while keeping the game accessible for casuals. The new player and onboarding system of the First Descendant, from what we've seen, looks like it's geared towards trying to convert players of other games into First Descendant players. It doesn't explain all of the systems perfectly, but it does a really good job of making things feel familiar. Alright, let's take a look at some of the systems in-game. The UI in menus and during upgrade screens is perfect. I really can't complain. Everything is highlighted where it needs to be, things are green, things are red, there's good comparison options. However, the actual in-game HUD, the combat sections, it's a little bit off. I have a few complaints. First off, everything's spread out too far. You have your guns in the bottom right, your abilities on the bottom, and then your health and magazine adjacent to your character, like in The Division. Now, while this doesn't sound like a lot, what it does mean is that you have to make intentional efforts to look around the screen and see different things. In a game like Destiny, if I want to see how much ammo is left in my magazine, I look down at the bottom left of the screen, and I see my currently equipped gun, my other two weapons, my abilities, and my super. In the First Descendant, if I want to see my mag size, I look next to my character. It's very easily accessible and very easy to see, but then I don't get any of the other bonuses of seeing my other weapons or seeing my abilities. I need to actually make a conscious effort to go and be like, how long is my ability on cooldown for? The HUD style is like The Division, where you have everything adjacent attached to your character, but it's too simple. The Division shows everything, every important piece of information, like your abilities, your specialist weapon, your health, your shield, your ammo. The Division has everything in that little adjacent menu, perfectly organized, everything that you'll ever need. Your health, your shield, your specialist charge, your abilities, and all of your weapons. Everything is in one clump, and while it may be a little bit annoying to have to, there's so much going on, so much to process, it's easier and more fluid to play. It keeps things less rigid and less, I have to check my other weapons and I have to check my abilities. Another slight complaint is with the abilities, and that they don't have numbers or any indicator to tell if they're off or on cooldown besides the bar. Warframe has a great system for this. They have class-specific passives just above the abilities, so you can see everything that you need to specifically for your character. And then just below that, they have all your abilities, and if they have a cooldown, it'll display it on the ability. For the First Descendant, I think just replacing the bars with numbers or having a toggle in settings to change it to numbers would just be perfect. It would be nice and clean. And for the weapons in the bottom right, I think maybe if they can figure out a way to keep that closer to the health and sort of not out of the way, it would be really good. And if they don't, I think just being able to increase the size of your weapons so they take up more room on the screen, they're more pertinent as a reminder for people. The game performs and it looks great. I swapped down to the lower graphics settings with a high FOV, and the game still looks gorgeous. The standout feature of the game has to be the party system. It is by all means flawless. It's the best matchmaking and party system that I've seen in a game in this genre. A good example of this is the way that parties work in instances, and it really reminds me of the Duty Finder from Final Fantasy XIV. Another great feature is that the story missions don't actually take place in instanced areas. It all happens in the open world and everything is connected, and people can join you whenever they want just by killing an enemy or being near you while you're doing an objective. It feels similar, but it's slightly less rigid than Destiny 2's public events. The story mission system reminds me a lot of Destiny 1's original gameplay trailer, where a fire team walks out of the divide and there's a big spider tank there, and then a few high-level players come over and they kill it together as a team. And it's all seamless and fluid, and it actually is just exactly how this game works. The Colossus system and the bosses are great, and in the beta there was no entry cost. I'm not too sure if there will be in the final game, but it's super quick to get into, super quick to find a team, and you can really feel the scale of the fight. The reward system from replayable missions and bosses are a really strong point of the game. They remind me a lot of Warframe's relics, where you have high tier drops that have lower chances of rolling. Overall, the guns are varied and fun to use. We only got access to one or two of the unique guns in the tech test, but they feel super nice. All of the aspects of looter shooters are there, and they're polished and they're really well done. The sheer amount of loot that drops and that's earned from missions is great, except for the fact that your inventory space is really pretty limited. It seems as though at the moment the only way to increase this besides one-time achievements are through spending money. This is not a fun system, and I'm not going to play devil's advocate for Nexon, saying that it's a free-to-play game and that they need the money. It's not an acceptable thing, selling inventory space and then filling it all with useless stuff. However, gunplay feels good, it feels snappy and responsive. My only criticism might be that we need a little bit more bullet magnetism or stickiness on precision weapons like scout rifles and snipers. Having a third-person game put you into first-person to use a scope is fun and immersive, but it just ends up not feeling good in any game that it's in. I think probably a really good example is The Division. If you've played that and you've used scopes on weapons, it just feels worse than that. Because this is a PvE game, I don't see why they couldn't add a little bit of stickiness or bullet magnetism just to make those weapons a little bit more fluid and easier to use. Another option is just to give us a toggle that keeps us in third person when we're using scoped weapons. I don't like having to dodge a boss's telegraphed attacks while switching between third and first person. It gives me a lot of whiplash, especially if I'm spamming and using abilities or the grappling hook. Speaking of the abilities, they're a lot of fun to experiment with. There is a little bit of delay when your character finishes the animation, and it's fluid but not snappy. I think the global cast time for abilities could go down a little bit, and it could keep your momentum active, or just something that sort of keeps you in the moment and doesn't, stop you in place to use an ability or to press the button and then have your character do a 2 or 3 second animation before pulling out their ultimate weapon. The character roster provides a lot of variety. You've got your standard roles like tanks and support and utility, but everything feels well thought out and consistent and coherent. The characters themselves feel a lot like Warframes. They have 4 abilities and a passive, and they'll usually have an ability that you can spam that's cheap, and then one that's a little bit more costly to use. But all of the kits have individual synergy. Everything can be paired with something else, and the mod system complements that perfectly. Now, the mod system is just Warframe's mod system, where everything has a cost that increases as you upgrade it, and the higher level the Descendant, the more mod slots. Mods also have polarities to make them cheaper if they're put in certain slots. It's perfectly just Warframe system boiled down. Now, the progression system, it's made up of a lot of moving parts, and it adds a lot of complexity to upgrading your Descendant and your weapons. Going back to the mod system, there are only 2 currencies now. In the earlier tech tests, there used to be 2 or 3 specific currencies for mod upgrades themselves. But now we just have Kuiper crystals and gold as universal currencies for the whole game. I really think that if you are a Warframe player, you'll be right at home with most of the game's systems. It has Mastery, which functions exactly the same. Earning proficiency on weapons or a Descendant gives you global mastery rank that you use when you're at a certain point. Getting proficiency with weapons or your Descendant gives you mastery rank in addition to XP. And a lot of different pieces of content are locked behind mastery rank, like different weapons, mod upgrade levels, bosses, etc. The story overall, it's okay. We have only played the first 2 chapters, I believe, in the tech test. They tell it pretty well through character dialogue and the story missions, as well as the nice cutscenes that are scattered throughout the game. The voice acting in most circumstances is pretty strong. They have a pretty talented cast in both English and Korean. and I'm more excited to see how the world building fleshes out when the full game releases. Now, the part that most people probably want to hear about, the shop and the battle pass. Yes, there was a battle pass in the tech test. Now, there was no way to spend real money during the tech test, but they did give everyone a lot of currency to spend on different things like cosmetics or the battle pass, or even upgrade materials. And yes, that does lead me to believe that this game could be pay to win. Because it is a PvE game, I find it hard to argue with it, but if the systems become incredibly obtuse and grinding becomes too hard without spending money, I have to take away my recommendation for the game. It kind of reminds me a little bit of Warframe, where everything has a price that you can pay with premium currency, but most people won't end up doing that. Overall, is the game ready to launch? I'd say yes. If everything is in its current state going forward, with some minor stability and little tweaks here and there, the game will be really good. It's something that I'm genuinely excited for, and at the moment we have the Final Shape, Final Fantasy DLC coming out. I am keeping my eye on this game because I will play it on release. And I think that if you're a fan of games like Warframe or The Division or Destiny, you'll be a pretty big fan of this as well. Thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe.